So I'm going to now give you some examples of that. And the first one is when I'm struggling to learn. So this is the challenge that we're thinking about. When you're challenged in any of those situations, most often you're challenged with a new skill, something you thought you could never do. Or it may be that I've given you a challenge. I want you to be able to create a film and you've never done a film before. When you're facing the challenge, just think for a moment. How do you feel? How does it make you feel when you're really feeling like, gee, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can do this. So let's just get in touch with that feeling. What it looks like and what it feels like to be struggling when you're challenged with something you're just not sure of. And now that you're remembering, oh, from a habits of mind perspective, I might be saying, I may have to just take a responsible risk here. And once you do, you get into the pit, because the pit is where the struggle occurs. If you're doing any deep learning, if you're doing something that's tough to learn, you're in the pit of the struggle of learning. And there's nothing that is the silver bullet from that. There's nothing that gets you out easily. You just have to persist. You have to continue to work hard and you have to stay with it. So that's where those strategies for persisting really become prominent. And I would suggest that if you help students know, it's so interesting, but very often they don't realize the backstory of someone who's done something already and done it well. For example, you might say, oh, I made this presentation, but I don't tell you the backstory of how many iterations and different slides I put in, how many experts, how many people I consulted, some of my best good friends who are also consultants. Hey, talk with me about it. How would this get better? Show me how I might make this slide different. Help me think about this. So for me, I go into the pit thinking, oh gosh, I sure hope this is going to be good, because this is a keynote and it has to be. Slide right down in. And then what's going to help me get out of the pit? Well, I have to persist. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's drudgery. Sometimes it's not stuff I want to do. Like I'm not keen on finding the right font sometimes. But then I think I have to do that if I want it to be good and if I want it to look well. And so I work at it. And those persisting ideas are often for me. When I'm struggling the most, I turn to some of my peers and say, help me with this. In other words, I have in my backpack tools that I use, strategies that I use that help me to stay with the task all the way to notice I'm climbing my way out of the pit and I'm successful. I may say the habit of mind that I feel most at this moment is responding with wonderment and awe. Wow. But notice I started at a level here. And when I went down into the pit, I went below that level. And when I come out, notice I'm at a higher level. So struggling to learn should really help you with realizing that backstory of going through, struggling with it, working hard, not quitting, have strategies, knowing who you can turn to, beginning to think more about thinking flexibly. If it's a project where you're creating, imagining, and innovating, beginning to call for that habit of mind, using your design work, thinking about it, and then successful, that you've actually done something. And what I'm going to suggest is self-direction and self-managing is really about everything that I'm saying. It's about what you do before you start to struggle, before you meet the challenge. It's what you do during the challenge when you're monitoring and trying to figure out what's in my backpack that I can use that's going to help me do this better, that's going to help me, for example, any strategies that I have, how I use the internet, how I fact check, what I do to make sure I'm getting to the right place. And then finally, in my backpack is always that opportunity for reflection. What happens after? So I not only celebrate what I've done, But I also then am able to say that I'm not only celebrating, but I've learned something that I'm going to apply next time. So struggling to learn. Now I'm just going to stop for a moment and just let you process that much before we go any further. Where I'm going now is to give you examples from classrooms. So here's one, and I hope you're using the chat so that you can have an opportunity to chat with one another, begin a little sense making in the chat so that you're able to then raise questions, ask things. And of course, I'll be with you later if you would like to have a question that you'd like me to try to work with you on. So just pay attention to what it is that you're learning right now and begin to think about, how does that make sense to me? So here's an example from a classroom where a student is doing self-monitoring. This teacher has set it up in a nice way. For example, this is for a document-based informal essay. So she starts with the learning targets. Now notice, when we're asking students to be self-monitoring about the work that they're doing, the learning targets become critically important. And the more precise you can be with them, the more you're clear about the expectations you have, the easier it's going to be for them to do the monitoring check-in. So for example, for historical theme, notice what she's done here. She's taken it and she's put it into I can statements. So the learning target then becomes also an assessment. So in self-monitoring, you're monitoring, do I get it? So she says, what you need to get is, I can explain the importance of the historical context and theme in my own words. Now notice how targeted that is. And then the student has the option, got it, done, developing, I'm not so sure about this. Feedback, I have underlined where you show the big ideas. So in other words, I may be developing, and as a teacher now, I'm giving you some feedback based on that specific target. And then I'm saying, it's all prepared. So when I do my I can statements on one side, and when I do my feedback on the other side, I'm already connecting the feedback to the learning target. And then I'm suggesting what the student could have done to make it better. So I have underlined where you show the big idea in your introduction and conclusion. And then I'm suggesting, say this in your own voice. Remember, theme in my own words. Explain importance of the theme. Why does this matter? How is this becoming a turning point? And then connect the facts to historical theme. Now, I have feedback suggestions like this because, as you know, there are patterns in students' work. And so I can have a list of them. I look at where the student is in the work that they're showing me. I want to know, they want to know, do I have it? Got it? And then if it's developing, which of these strategies might I try? So notice that we're getting students used to self-monitoring as they go along, paying attention to what they've done. And this becomes critically important as they become more self-managing.